Alright, I just started this video without pressing record. Killing it today. Okay. Take two. Let's talk about my most disappointing reads of 2021. I believe that worst reads and most disappointing reads are two separate things, which means there are going to be two separate videos. The worst books of the year to me are the things that just suck. You know, they're just the books you hate, you for whatever reason didn't like, they're bad books. Whereas your most disappointing reads kind of have a more personal aspect to it. It has to do more with books that you personally thought were going to be good, that you thought that you were going to love, and they just end up letting you down. For whatever reason. Maybe the premise was super interesting and the author just did nothing with it. Maybe you just thought the book was going to be good and it wasn't. Maybe it just wasn't to your personal taste. Maybe it had a lot of hype and it just didn't live up to it. There's a lot of different reasons a book can be disappointing. Now, I ranked these from 1 to 10. 10 being the thing that didn't disappoint me as much. Maybe it's worse than some of the other things on the list, but maybe I just didn't have as high of expectations of it. And number 1 being the most disappointing thing, the thing that I had the highest hopes for that just really didn't work for me. So starting off with number 10, we have the Lizzie and Diesel series from Jane Evanovich. Now, if you've been around this channel for a minute, you will know that I read a lot of Jane Evanovich novels. They are my comfort reads, my guilty pleasures, and yes, I do say guilty pleasures because I actually do feel guilty reading these books. They are not good, but I continue to read them because my grandma is the one who introduced them to me, and since she's no longer here, like it brings back good feelings for me. I ran out of Stephanie Plum books. There are 28 novels in that series. It is way past its prime and should be over by now, but regardless, I am caught up. So I decided to read the spin-off series, which is this Lizzie and Diesel series, which is a paranormal spin-off of the Stephanie Plum novels. What these books are about, I almost couldn't tell you. I believe there are 3 books in the series. I read all 3. I kind of think the series is over now. Like, the last book was put out in like 2015, so my guess is this series is over. It very much follows the same sort of formula that Stephanie Plum novels follow. It has that same like pitter-patter, like rhythmic flirting thing that she does. Except in this series, we have a lot more paranormal shenanigans. And there is this guy named Wolf, who is Diesel's cousin, and they're all racing to find the Caligula stones. Whoever gets all of them gets some sort of power in this world. Who knows, who cares? I certainly did not. One of the things that Jane Evanovich likes to do is kind of do that will they, won't they thing. And in this novel, Lizzie and Diesel are kept apart because if one of them were to sleep with the other, then one of them would lose their supernatural abilities, which I don't like paranormal things, so I was already primed not to like this, I guess. And to be honest, I just found it so boring and I couldn't follow like half of what was happening. Yes, some of the quirky characters were fun, but this is at number 10 because even though it's probably the worst thing on this list, I wasn't expecting that much from it, so it was only mildly disappointing. I raced through all 3 novels and all 3 novels just meshed into one thing because like they were basically the same novel 3 times over. Yes, you could say the same thing about the Stephanie Plum novels. I am well aware of this. Regardless, this is number 10 on my list. Coming in at number 9 is Dig by A.S. King. Now, I expected a lot from this. I saw so many people loving this, and boy, did it let me down. It's hard to explain what Dig is about. Basically, you have a cast of characters who are all just kind of living their lives, and they're all relatively young. What else can I say? I don't know. Regardless, this is about racism. I can tell you that much. It's about generational racism. It's more in the way the story is told, I think, than the plot. I enjoyed some of the characters. I really enjoyed the writing. I thought the writing was very interesting and different, very unique. It almost felt more like a play, the way that these POVs were being told. I even enjoyed some of the earlier stuff she had to say about racism. I felt like it was somewhat subtle and nuanced, which was nice. You weren't being slapped in the face with it, which white women can sometimes do when writing about race. And so I actually was really enjoying this until we got to the end. The end, in my opinion, is horrible. They could not slap you in the face harder than with the ending. She just straight up tells you the the message she wants you to take away from this story. It's just like, hey, you know how we solve racism? By being better people. By just not being racist. Like, that's what this book came down to, and it just felt so shallow in the end. Like, such a shallow message to send to kids. Like, you make it sound so simplistic when it's a little more complex than that. The ending of this book felt like some sort of inspirational poster or something. It was very frustrating, and then when it came to the actual stories of the characters, there's one character that just felt completely pointless. Like, I don't know why we needed her story at all, and it was like the most dramatic story and the weirdest story, and I feel like that was the only reason it was added in, was to give it this like surreal part of the story, because like that's what A.S. King is known for, I guess. I just really think this book does not work, and I think it's very overrated, and I think it's given a lot more credit than it should be for the message it's sending. Number 8 on this list is The Club by Takis Wurger. I read this earlier in the year when I did a subscription service where you fill in all this information about your reading taste, and they give you 3 recommendations based on everything you said. It sounded so up my alley, and I was so excited to read it. And to be honest, I really liked it for most of the book. The writing was great. It did remind me almost of like reading The Catcher in the Rye, which I hate that book with every fiber of my being, but it's a coming of age novel, right? I think that's what it is that did it. And it was just like this certain way that it was being told. Very introspective, as well as being very observational about everyone else around him. Now, this book is about this club that is at this like kind of prep school that he ends up coming to at his aunt's request. This is his last remaining relative, and she hasn't really been that close to him ever because of her own issues. Her reaching out to him is kind of a big deal because finally he has someone he can connect to. But she has a mission for him when he gets there. That is for him to infiltrate this club. This is an all-boys club, secret society type thing at this prep school that she works at. Now, I feel like you can probably guess where this story is going. Especially if you're a woman, you can definitely guess where the story is going. These boys are being a little bit of rapists. It's very obvious that many of the female characters, that was going to be part of their story. It's just, the more I read the book, the more frustrated I was getting, because I thought it was doing something, because it was very satirical, and the way that it was looking at some of these guys, and there was like this one student in particular who was obsessed with getting into this club, and who was obsessed with getting into the school, and like it became their entire personality, and like everybody knows someone like that, where like the frat they belong to is like who they are down to their core. I don't know, I just thought we were gonna get some insights, and we didn't. Instead, what we got is like all the pitfalls that I was hoping we would avoid, I guess. Like all the pitfalls of real life men in these situations, or every other man who writes a book, a literary novel, where it's like they end up with this girl who's like a little bit broken by some things she's endured, who is, I guess, going to fix his life and make him feel complete again because he's been so lonely up till this point. He ends up getting into this club, he ends up connecting with these guys, and because he's been so lonely, he really starts to see them as friends and brothers, and I thought that we were going to get a dark ending that said something about the men who stand by and watch and let these things happen. And instead, we got a hero's tale where he comes in and saves the day, and like, I guess we've solved rape because as long as the good boy stands up to the rapist once, then this will never happen again. Like, it was frustrating. It was not what I wanted. I want an actual serious look at rape culture and not this like male fantasy of being like a white knight. It did nothing for me. I was really mad at it. Was enjoying the journey, did not like where we ended up. Thank you, no. Number 7 on this list is The 12 by Justin Cronin. This is a sequel to The Passage by Justin Cronin, which I gave 4 stars because I really, really enjoyed it. The Passage is basically this vampire epic. It is about this program that is done with convicts that they're basically trying to make some sort of super soldiers with this serum. It was very unlike anything I've read before because like genre fiction isn't like my go-to, especially something epic like this, and it really was quite a trek because there's part 1 which takes place in our current times, and then there was like part 2 and 3 that took place like 100 years later or 1,000 years later, once civilization has broken down and tried to build itself back up. It was very interesting, all the things it was doing. Now, I read the sequel this year and didn't enjoy it. And I don't even know what to say about it because I can't pinpoint what it is about it that didn't work for me. In so much as that I just didn't care about these characters nearly as much as I did in the first book. Like, their complexities were almost taken away and they became less dimensional than they were in the first novel. I got really sick of the allegorical religious bullshit. Like, that does nothing for me, and so I felt like in this book we were getting kind of beaten over the head with it. Women are really given the short end of the stick in these novels, so I wasn't enjoying that either, and the men aren't interesting enough to really hold your attention, so it was not a good sequel. I'm thinking I will still read the third book, or I'll listen to it on audiobook, just to finish out the series and hope that maybe it ends well. I do feel like middle book syndrome is a thing, and hopefully that's what this is. Ooh, the next book was Little Boy Blue by MJ Arlidge. This is the 5th book, I believe, in this series, the Helen Grace series. It is a detective series. That's really all I can say about it. It just follows this one detective, Helen Grace, within her police squad and all her different cases. It's a different case to each book. And I have loved this series, mostly because I love her character. I love how dark the series can get at different points. I like her character. Her character's into some BDSM things. That's probably why I like her and why I find her interesting. But this book just really let me down in one major way. Well, in a couple ways, really, but one of the big ways was that they introduced a trans character and were very hardcore villainizing this character and making it seem like they were the person who had committed all these murders, and the entire way they did it just felt so gross. The way that some of the detectives talked about this character was disgusting, and it just like put such a bad taste in my mouth, and it went on for way too long, so I just like went away from this book really hating it. And I think it opened my eyes and kind of let me see the rest of the flaws with this series, because for so long I loved the first book especially so much that I felt like I feel like I had rose-tinted glasses on for the rest of the series. And I think now I kind of realize like just how little information we've got, especially about Helen Grace. Like, we're in the 5th book. We should know more about her other than just like, oh yeah, she's really into her job and she's stoic and she likes BDSM. Like, that's it. Those are the characteristics we have for her. And that's not enough for 5 books. And then we've got another character, Charlie, who just like is doing the very, very overdone storyline of like, can she have it all? Can she be a mother and be good at her job too? And I just don't care about that. Because while I like her character, like I said, it's storyline I've seen before 800 billion times. Women characters should not be written by men like this. I don't know. They're just very two-dimensional characters all throughout this series, and at this point I found the Tana French series, which is just so perfect, that I don't need this series anymore, and I DNF'd this series after this book. Number 5 was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelidies. I don't understand the hype for this book. I was definitely thinking that I was going to love this because of all the hype it got. Look, the twist is good. I will give it that. This is a thriller about a psychiatrist who decides to take on a patient who has not spoken since she murdered her husband, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, no idea. Regardless, this is very much a character study of the psychiatrist, as well as the patient, but mostly the psychiatrist, because we're seeing everything from his point of view. So we're trying to see, like, why would he want to take on this patient? What makes him think he can cure her and get information out of her, etc., etc. I just, first of all, hated him, and that would be fine. I can deal with hating a character if he's interesting, and like I've repeated that so many times on my channel, and he was sort of interesting, but once again, like, I felt so disconnected from him that I was just left feeling cold. I felt such a detachment from this book that when it finished or when the twist came, I was just like, okay, like I don't feel anything for this. I gave it a 3.5, but like, I just expected so much and feel like I got so little. I guess at the very end of the day, I was expecting this to at least be memorable, and a couple months from now, I don't think it will be. Now, I'm about to speak about a book that has very much the same problems as that last one, because number 4 is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I have exactly the same things to say about this one as I do The Silent Patient, which is that I was just left feeling very, very distant from the characters and not caring a lot. This is a thriller about a man who wants to kill his wife because she's cheating on him with a contractor. Such a cliche setup. The thing that is interesting about this book, potentially, is that there is a woman he meets on a plane who wants to help him get away with murder. It's very clear that her point of view is the one that's supposed to be interesting, and it's definitely more interesting than the guy's point of view, which is just very mediocre and cliche, and he's just kind of a turd. I just never found her character as fascinating as I felt like I was supposed to. I felt like this was more of a plot-driven novel than a character-driven novel, and I guess I definitely at this point prefer character-driven novels, especially in the thriller genre. I think that there are things that happen in the plot that I definitely didn't expect. That, like, things unfolded in ways I wasn't expecting. I need motivations and characters to care about, and I didn't get that here. I was just left feeling nothing towards this, and I know I'm not going to remember this a couple months from now. Like, somebody give me thrillers that are unforgettable. That's what I want right now. I need some Gillian Flynn style shit. Get up to that level. Especially male authors. What the fuck? Okay, I know I just like spoke down on male authors. Here's a thriller by a female that I didn't like. Number 3 is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. With all my thrillers, I have the same thing to say, which is that if your characters are two-dimensional, then I don't give a crap about them. This is about a couple who kills together. That's it. And like, that's the whole story. If you were to tell me that premise, I could have written this novel for you. Because nothing unexpected happens in this, and it's so boring. The characters are so thin. Like, there is no complexity to them whatsoever. They just go through their day killing people and then like taking care of their kids, and I guess like you're supposed to connect to them because like suburbia is boring, and maybe if you're like a mom who lives in suburbia, you'll connect with that. But this wasn't introspective enough to feel personal, to really connect with their audience, to make you feel like, oh yes, like I connect with these problems so deeply. Like, I want this novel to convince me that killing could be fun and solve all my white woman fucking middle class problems. Like, that's what I wanted, and this book did not do that. It was just kind of boring. Like, somehow this couple made murder boring. So yeah, number 3. Number 2. Okay, now these next two, these are the two that break my heart. These are the two that are the most disappointing. Like, I wanted and expected to love these next 2 books. Number 2 is Dwarf Bruises by Simone. I cannot tell you how much I love the Thorntapple series. Like, it's so moody and evocative and sensual, and I loved every second of the first 3 books, other than the twist at the end of the 2nd book, which honestly, it grew on me throughout the series, okay? Because the writer, Simone, is just that good, that she somehow made that horrible twist grow on me throughout the series. But this 4th book, it was so boring. Now, the Thorntapple series is about a group of friends who get together in this mansion and have orgies, while also doing some ritual. I guess they just had some rituals to their orgies. Let's just go with that. That's pretty much it. There's some stuff that ties back to their parents and like the different generations and the area in which they live. Whatever, who cares? I was all about the dynamic between the characters and the mood and atmosphere of this mansion that they're staying in. The 4th book, it felt like we were building up to something. Like, we knew something was happening because all of a sudden this door appears out of nowhere. And it's very clear that they've opened a portal or something. They've done something with these rituals. And now they don't know how to make it stop. And there were some things that I loved with this, because all of a sudden, like, whatever's in that realm they don't know is starting to enter their world, and it's starting to affect the world around them. It's starting to affect the town. It's starting to affect the crops and the people. People are getting sick, and I was just like, there were so many ways they could have went with this, but like they dragged it out so much. Like, I wanted more. Just give me more of the horror, and like I totally could have been down for that. The characters also all felt really separate from each other in this novel. They were all kind of kept secluded in their own minds, like doing their own things, trying to deal with the situation they're in, but like without each other, which really took away from the point of the book, really took away from anything, really took away every single thing I loved about this book, which was the dynamic between the characters. I also felt like some of the characters were pointless and like just forgotten about or something. Like Beckett. Why was Beckett even there? Truly. Like, I thought we were going somewhere with that and we just didn't. Yeah, this was such a disappointing ending and I felt like it could have been so, so good. And my number one most disappointing book of the year is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. I wanted to love this so much. I've never read a book by Grady Hendrix, but people have hyped up his work for so long that I went into this fully expecting to love it. Especially with the premise. The premise was made for me. I love horror movies. Like, I eat that shit up. I live and breathe that shit. I watch horror movies every fucking week. And so a premise like this about a group of girls who've made it to the end of their horror movie and they come and they support each other every week and now they're getting picked off one by one. I mean, come on. And something about this just did not work for me whatsoever. And I know I'm not alone in this. I've seen that this has very, very mixed reviews, so thank God for that. I got this as an ARC, so I read this before I saw other people's reviews and I was just like, this is Grady Hendrix? Like, this is the guy you guys love so much? Really? Huh. And so I thought like it was just me, but so glad to see my opinion is not unusual with this book. This felt very plot heavy, it felt very action heavy. Like, we're just going from scene to scene to scene to scene of her on the run, the main character on the run, trying to get away from this dude, trying to figure things out as she goes. And I don't know, that's just not what I was expecting or what I wanted. It felt like we were missing a lot of the connective tissue in between all these action pieces. It felt like I didn't really get to know any of these characters besides the main character, which is really what I was looking forward to. I wanted to see these girls' friendships. I wanted to see the dynamics. I wanted to know more about their situations and what they've gone through. And I just didn't get any of that. I don't know. It just wasn't fun or smart or clever or any of the other adjectives I've heard be used for Grady Hendrix. I am still gonna read more of his work because, like I said, this one has pretty mixed reviews, whereas the rest of his work seems to be pretty well loved. But yeah, this one was a big letdown. I hope you liked this video. I have plenty more end of the year content coming. I figured we'd work our way up to the worst and best. Next will probably be my most surprising books of 2021. I also want to talk about the best and worst smut I read in 2021. So yeah, lots of end of year content coming. I hope you like this video and I hope we'll come back again soon. Bye.